This is our last episode of season 3, and I'm thrilled to be closing recording for 2024 with a dear friend and mentor, Gayle Colman. Gayle is a coach, writer, entrepreneur, and creator of Somatic Finance with over 40 years of experience in the field. She's not only a certified financial planner, but also a master integral coach, a big leap coach with the Hendricks Institute, and a certified teacher in the Gateness methodology. She brings a unique approach to personal finance that encourages us to align our financial practices with our deeper values, beliefs, and embodied wisdom. Today, we're not just talking numbers and strategies, we're talking about the ways money intersects with who we are at every level mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and in our bodies. Gayle's philosophy of somatic finance takes money out of the realm of spreadsheets and into the realm of presence. Together, we explore how to create a safe and supportive space for financial conversations while aligning our values. Why aligning with our values can dissolve money anxiety and what it looks like to truly inhabit our bodies while making financial decisions. In our conversation, Gayle shares transformative practices and personal stories, illustrating how small shifts can profoundly change our financial lives. If you've ever felt a disconnect between your head, heart, and wallet, or wondered how financial well being can go hand in hand with personal growth, you're in the right place. This is more than a financial conversation, it's an invitation to bring your whole self into your relationship with money. So grab a cozy spot, settle in, and let's begin this journey toward a more conscious, connected approach to financial wellness. Welcome, Gayle. It is such a pleasure and honor to have you here on Highly Sensitive Money. Thank you for your time and thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Diana.
And Gayle, you and I met through, I think the first time it was at Nasruddin, and
hmm
it might have been 2 years ago when we met in Canyon Beach, I believe.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's recent, and yet I feel like you're one of those heart soul people that I could have known forever. So I don't know the distinction sometimes.
No, I know what you mean. I remember we've had a couple of conversations since then, and I've always felt so like seen and touched by your work as another woman in finance, as a person who's bringing in some of the more, I guess, esoteric or ephemeral aspects of money that at the end of the day feel like they're actually the main part. Like the numbers are secondary to what you talk about, to the work that you do.
Mm, yeah, I hear you, and I think that's true. I also believe that we are we're whole people, so there is no distinction. It's just that
Mm.
this aspect of our human side hasn't been given the same attention. And that's why I'd say we're in this perhaps this conversation because there is a bridging and an integration that wants to happen. And it's baby steps, it's giant leaps, it's creative play, it's courage, it's all of the above.
And when you say this part of the human conversation, I imagine you're talking about the inner part of the inner, like our body, bringing our body into the conversation.
Our inner, our whole body, yes, and it's excuse me. Our body is consists of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and and so there's that integration to recognize there's a mental body, which includes a lot of and most of the work that we do in money and finances, our rational mind, our strategic planning. How do we strategize and get things done? And that's manifest and seen on the exterior world. And then there's the physical body and the spiritual body and said it and then the physical mental spiritual, those three that are more, as you said, esoteric. Where do they intersect with money and finances? And that's where this is where this work lives, if that hopefully makes some kind of sense, or an entry point. Yeah.
It's a good entry point. It's a good portal in. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself of like how did you get into finances? Like a little bit synopsis of that story. And also when did somatics or when did the other parts of ourselves, right? The mental, the emotional, the spiritual, when did that start to come
Yeah.
into your work in finance?
Yeah. Well, a quick quick trip down memory lane, getting a finance degree in college, business degree. I certainly had the aptitude and was, happily learning the skills, the trade. And I happened to be in Dr. O'Toole's risk management class, reviewing a homeowner's policy and having a moment of, oh my God, this is important. Like this is good information. This, how do people really need to know this? And I got both excited and irritated. Excited that, wow, I want to help people make wise financial decisions. This is applicable. I can see a path from my degree. Irritated because why weren't my friends who are getting liberal arts degrees learning about this too? Because this is really it's general information. It's where financial literacy can be born, in our education system, in the knowledge we learn. So that was where I began. I wanted to help people make wise financial decisions. And I learned that was becoming a financial planner. I chose Boston from my home state of Florida as my destination, the financial center of my choice. And that's where I drove up in the early 80s and landed to begin my career. And that was finances, that was financial planning. The first 5 years were in corporate, and I was a little bit disillusioned by the experience because it was very transaction oriented. It was very profit oriented. It was not people oriented. And so the first opportunity I had to do it better, to do it more people client centered, I started my firm with my partner. It was in 1988.
So 5 years after entering the industry, you started your own financial advising firm?
Mm-hmm. It was a leap of faith. Uh, I think we were I'm going to say naive in the sense that we didn't know what really starting your own business was, but we were well resourced, resilient, smart. This is my partner in life and partner in business, and he and I have no regrets and never looked back. What began to form was, the beginning of doing financial planning differently, not just selling product. We never sold product, but really looking at the client and their needs and their financial planning first. And then when you ask about when did, I'll say, our integral approach, or broader than just the practical side of money and finances, come into play, that too was one of those moments where I paused. I said, we've got to do better. Often we would have experiences of doing everything financially right, meaning there's always there can always be the optimal financial answer, to I don't want to say optimize. It's like the best return or maximize, or this is what makes financial sense. That doesn't always necessarily mean it makes sense for this precious human who is more than money, more than finances. So there's an optimal choices for an individual, but that may or may not be directly focused on the highest return or maximizing money. So that's where I realized that we're creating these plans that are accurate and good and do all of the things that the client says they want, and yet something isn't tracking. They're not getting implemented 100%. What's going on? And we had a particular client moment of that gentleman and his wife were selling and transacting their business to their daughter, transitioning their business to their daughter, finished signing all of the paperwork. It was a beautiful experience. And I asked him, I'll call him Alan. Alan, are you happy? And he began to sob for a while. And it was one of those moments where I went, we have so much more to learn. We we've got to do this better because something's missing. It was a beautiful moment. We handled this the space and the really well. But that was the beginning of the psychology of money, the behavioral finance, to really understand the interior. I was lucky enough to I'm gonna pause there because I could go on, but I wanted to yeah, sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. But I
Yeah.
did have a question, or I had a comment, two comments that came up for me. There's this book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and I don't love all of the book, but he has one line in there that I always appreciate, that money looks like a math problem because it has numbers, but it's much more of a psychology problem.
I gosh, I have chills when you say that. And can I edit that and say, it's
Please.
not a problem. We are precious human beings, and
Mm,
it's so I don't want to call our life and our journey and our decisions and just us being who we are a problem. In fact, I get God teary-eyed because it's like pathologizing, our lives only compounds it. Only makes us do our own interior shaming and blaming and self-destruction. So I want to say that if that quote, it's like it makes it's not a math thing to
question.
question. It's a psychology invitation.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an inquiry into way of being. And speaking of way of being, when you share this example, and I've heard that you shared this example in other podcasts of this client who's selling their business and then breaks down into sobs. As practitioners, as a coach, as a financial planner, anybody who's in like a healing profession or a holding profession, the space that we're holding with our client often gives them access to something that they may not be able to access on their own,
Yeah,
right? Had he been
100%.
like,
Yes. I wrote an article for a now defunct journal. It was called the Journal of Financial and Estate Planning. It's over 20 years old, and I'm happy to send it to you if you don't have it. But it was an article that I wrote. It was like our job is creating safe space. And it was all about the space that we create inside and also outside, which is not really indivisible, but we can say it that way. But it's all about creating safe space for our clients, for the people that we are with. And to know that what is going on inside of us, our what I call interiority, our emotions, our sensations, our thoughts affect how we are. It's called a field effect, how we are resonating. And this is all science based. This isn't woo woo, I need to say. Is very, very important. And that's why the work of somatic finance really came into play and into fruition. And I mean, we can circle back around about that, but I mean, that was the natural expression of, okay, what is really missing in our work today with money and finances? Because we were developing protocols and practices for the psychology of money. Behavioral finance, blossomed, and it was all concept. It was all mental. So we were missing this beautiful vessel that is below our neck. For us to truly know and experience and benefit from that field effect, that loving caring, we have to be inhabiting our body. We our awareness, our attention is expands to hold our whole body, not just what we're thinking, but how our body feels, the movement, the relaxation, the tension, all of it. So right now, you and I are creating space. And how am I and how are you? what's happening inside you, what's happening inside me, affect this space, create this space, and we are this invitation to listeners to step into this space as a generous welcome with our motivation, or we can get entangled in something that is less inviting. So even as I was saying that, I noticed my shoulders relaxed, my heart opened a little bit more. I'm looking at you, this beautiful woman who's doing great work in the world, and I feel so much more alive and joyful.
Mhm. And one thing I thought of is that so often when we're young, we have to create strategies, right? Because you're born in the world and there's so much going on, especially for people who identify as highly sensitive. And the work of growing up is to come back and have inquiry into the strategies. And I love your pushback on like the word problem. Not so much a problem, but it's just like these strategies were helpful. Are they still helpful? And sometimes the practice of coming into our body, coming into our heart will touch on the places that those strategies were protecting us from, right? That's why I see so much resistance on doing the work that's beyond the concepts.
Yeah. We never, the practice, I'm going to say something, is to never leave that space.
Oh, don't dissociate. Okay.
Well, I'm not going to go into any like the technical terms. I don't think that's associating, but it's abiding. It's like, and realizing we just get to return, and the more we return, the more that pathway opens up and becomes easier and easier. And so I, for you highly sensitive people, I'm going to say it's actually far more important to continue that pathway and open that pathway up, because this is where we get we get really resourced. We all get resourced here, but highly sensitive people are more attuned. And they feel more of that space that we were talking about, and so can be much more, I'll say, imprinted or affected by it. So there's a titration of being being so impeccably centered, being so impeccably grounded in me, in that space, that I can, I mean, just what's coming up for me now is like I can dance in that space and titrate depending upon what's happening in that moment. But I'm never ever leaving me and where I'm resourced. So for me, the practices are rooting down through my pelvic floor. For women, it is through the pelvic floor. For men, it can be more through the legs and feet. But let's just say, women. So rooting down through the pelvic floor into the earth, so that I know I'm constantly resourced from something that is much larger than me, the both down in the earth and in the sky, whatever is your own belief system, and then rooting, and when I say rooting, and then expanding up through my heart, through my all of the different channels and glands in my head, and through the top of my head up into the heavens, the sky. That's undeniable for all of us. And so my invitation and suggestion for highly sensitive people is to really begin and continue to practice that kind of resourcefulness, but abiding there, so it's never in question.
And you use the term titration. So, for those of us that have had, and again, living in the society that we live, it is so normal to have had like difficult things happen in childhood.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're coming into your body and those memories come up or those feeling sensations come up, titration is only going into it enough where you get a taste of it and then going back to a place of safety. And it's depending on what's happening, sometimes it's much better to do it with someone who's holding space with you
Yeah.
to create again that field of safety.
Yeah, I believe it. You're talking about, um, I think it is it Peter Levine with the pendulation. So it's like a
Yes,
going in and
definitely.
back and forth. It's this weave, and that's where I love the Mobius strip or the infinity loop. It's just looping, excuse me, back and forth. And one also a practice that I love is that I can do by myself, and is I'm feeling the center in my belly, feeling my heart, and breath is reliable in any kind of practice, is always going to help us, but like breathing down into our belly and feeling like that infinity loop, and then coming up to our heart with just a breathing rhythm to where we're connecting our belly and our heart. So there's movement and attention that allows us to be kind and generous with that space that's been activated. And notice that when we're in this infinity loop, this movement, our attention is in our torso, our body, our belly, and our heart, and we're not thinking. Because a lot of times the stuckness gets reified and harder because we're weaving in it some of the beliefs and thoughts about it. So as if we can let those thoughts go, like a cloud drifting in the sky, and just stay here, not trying to get anywhere, but just simply be with this movement and allow it to settle us. That creates a little bit more space. And it's the space that allows healing to happen. Trusting our body to have the wisdom to know what we can handle and what we can't. And our body, as my direct experience, never shows me anything that is not ready for me to see, feel, heal, and release.
Yes, yes, I've definitely had that experience too. And connecting it to money, because money can be a thing that activates us so much,
Mm.
especially the way that society's set up currently. Titrating in and out of it, one of the practices that I always invite people to do, especially people who are very fearful around money, very avoidant, is to have them like literally light a candle before you open your bank accounts and give yourself a timer, like maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes on Friday with your lit candle, timer goes off, and you get to stop.
Yeah, and and I'll toss us some more. So the titrating, like here's a tiny titrating practice. Light your candle, pull out your numbers, your statements, and let's assume it's on a Friday, and you say, and you speak these words. You say, "Today is Friday. I lit my candle. I'm looking at my statements. I feel scared. I feel tension in my belly. I have the thought, I don't know what I'm doing." So it's whatever's arising in that space, that's truth. You're speaking truth and integrity, and what happens is our body then begins to trust. I love what you said. I love that practice, the timer. And and say I have 10 minutes to be here with this, to feel this experience. It builds confidence, it builds integrity. That's a powerful practice you have.
Yeah, thank you. And in your book, The Body of Money, you talk about the three centers, the heart center, the body center. For people who are, it's the first time that they're thinking about bringing their heart or their body into their money. When people are learning or starting to connect their heart with their money, their body with their money, because I think a lot of us assume that it's only head money. Like head goes with money, that's it.
Yeah. I would say that first look at that limiting belief.
Mm,
Play with the belief like money is only related to what I think and not about what I feel. I mean, so there's that kind of entry point to just begin to understand, where did this belief come from? It came to protect me in a certain way. That's really where beliefs arise. So that softens us and our capacity to go, wait a minute, I do want to feel my money. That's who I am. I have been like bifurcating myself. No wonder this is so painful. I'm allowed to feel. I am allowed to, you know, have sadness, have fear, all of me is welcome. It's not just for the people who like numbers and finances. That to me is probably a huge opening. And then to be able to go, so I what I love, and it's the heart center and the belly center, and they both have different qualities. So we can use them. And in my book, I talk about the belly center is the archetype of the capitalist, which I know can trigger people. The heart center is the archetype of the philanthropist, and the head center is the academic. And so, what would your belly say? Have a conversation with your belly, and it would be but first feel your own belly, give your belly attention, and have so the somatic practice I love that is the belly heart spine. So there's that belly heart spine, those three centers that touch on safety, connection, and dignity. But just if you wanted to kind of break this up, I would do a belly center practice, which is just really expanding your breath into your belly and feeling that center, and then having a conversation. What do you want me to know? What would you like to tell me? And let whatever comes come, without, and if you start to have thoughts like, this is weird, I don't know what I'm doing, that's a part of you that's trying to protect you, it's skeptical, whatever, just let that go. Come back and let your belly express something. When it may come in symbols or colors or texture, and then set a timer, do the somatic practice for 5-10 minutes, and then set the timer for another 5-10 minutes to journal what happened. What does my belly wants me to know, as a prompt. And do the same thing with your heart center, because they are different spaces, and they do have, I'd say, different kinds of information to share, and they can be at odds, which could be a whole nother podcast probably.
yeah, I mean, it's such a juicy subject. There's so much inside of us that's happening, especially when you're trying to see beliefs and see intentions. So thank you for opening that up.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places to open up these questions when it comes to money is like, what was the financial background of your childhood? And do
Mm.
you see it affect the work you do today?
I loved that question. And yes, I do see how it has impacted my work today. It's a very generous question, because from when I read it, I was able to see the linkage, and it was really beautiful. So thank you for offering that, and for offering that to all your guests. Um, One of my earliest money memories, two of them, was my siblings they'd say, Gail, give me your candy and I'll be your friend. Or I know it's kind of a little dark side, or give me your allowance and I'll be your friend. And I, I thought, wow, like there's no question there. Of course I want that's friendship and connection is far more important to me, always has been, than candy or money and in my work and in how I move in the world, uh, it generosity and connection play out all the time. And so that linkage was really a special moment. And maybe I don't know, maybe you want something a little bit more dramatic and I can fill in more details, but to know that my early me, my child, my precious young one was that just open and giving and love to be with people and connect and be generous. That was like, oh wow, that's a that's a beautiful thing to recognize, and it has impacted everything that I have done in my adult life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. As an older sibling, I believe that I traded my brother like my larger nickels for his smaller dimes. I'm remembering when you said that, I was like, I'm pretty sure I told him, you can have my nickels and I'll take your dime.
I love that. I smart. That was smart. You know, a very good friend of mine. God, when we were talking about early money memories. She had said that her grandmother used to hold out a dime and a nickel and give her the choice. And she'd always take the nickel because it was the bigger one. And then came the time when she realized, oh, the dime is worth more. She took the dime. Her grandmother became upset and they never played the game again.
Wow.
Huge, huge, huge imprint. That's, we talk about these financial imprints. She was young. And so for her, that was the seed of being greedy, taking too much. I'm not allowed. I mean, you can fill in the blank of what she also a person who likes to connect and wants to be with people's like and generous and what it's so it was that's how simple and it can be. That's how fascinating. So when we talk about money integrating into life, it's already there. It's been there, and trauma or negative experiences that we've had already have money as a component, right? In so many ways, and so it's really this unknitting of unknitting of an experience that was complex and we weren't able to fully inhabit at that moment, that just needs more attention now as an adult from our whole adult place. But that's how I could say insidious it is, but that's just also how human and simple it is.
It's how human it is, right? I think so because it comes down to everything about being human: food, connection, relationships. Money is just, it's so intertwined, which is why I really love working with this subject because you never know where it might take a client, both in positive ways and in negative ways. And just remembering that experience of knowing I could trick my younger brother because he was 3 years older, he was four. Like he wanted the larger nickel. There's like this sense of like shame inside of me. Also, this kind of laughter, this like mischievousness.
Yeah.
And underneath it all, like a knowledge that neither of us really needed the nickels or the dimes. Like at the end of the day, it was more of a game. Like I probably had just learned what each one
Totally,
was.
totally. And just to like keep the conversation going on this example, which is so beautiful, and I love like the mischievous one is like, you know what? I'm a badass. Like
Here I am.
I'm
I'm 7 years old. I know what a dime is.
exactly. When we realize the experience and the actions that were taken, and we want, and if you talk about shame, that's a real place to unwind. I mean, but shame is different than guilt, and I think there's a very important distinction. Guilt is I've done something that I wish I hadn't done, or that there was a behavior that happened I didn't like, and you correct that by correcting the behavior, doing something like, you know what, I'm going to take you out and get you ice cream or something, and that will take up for all the nickels or whatever. Shame is external, that is put on us, and it's about someone saying you are a bad person, right? And or you are wrong, not your behavior. And so there's a whole different way to untangle that. I don't want to go into that now, but also restitution. It's like there's a realizing of what is theirs, what is not mine, that wants to separate. Like this is someone else's thing that they have stuck on me, but unknitting what is the truth there, what is mine to own and resolve, and because I know more, and what is not mine. So there's a real opportunity to unwind shame, which in my understanding is the constellation of, this sadness, anger, and fear that gets intertwined, and like this very strong committee that keeps it going.
Yeah, I appreciate you slowing it down. And as you were reminding me of that difference between shame and guilt, I thought, well, part of the reason that I used the word shame was because this is being recorded. And I'm a money coach, and I have this conception of myself as someone who's generous and focused on social justice. And here I am as a 7-year-old tricking my 4-year-old sibling. But that is literally part of the human experience, right? I remember hearing, I don't remember what philosopher it was, but this Greek philosopher, sir, that's saying nothing human is foreign to me,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
And I need to own behavior that hasn't been to the benefit of all in all of the ways, even, and again, not shaming 7-year-old me, but I am voicing the fear of being vulnerable in a recorded setting. And
Mm.
also the sense of pride of being able to do it.
Mhm.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of women have wounds around visibility.
Yeah.
So when I first started this project of recording myself, there was a lot of like self-censoring that could happen. And now here I am in my 30th episode
Yay.
celebrating by sharing this mischievous example. I'm going to stake that word, mischievous example of being a kid.
Well, and you know what? Well done. I champion you. And now I'm trying to think what's a really thing I could share. But I'll just plant that out, and like, okay, if it comes, I'll share. I don't have one right now. But what I do want to say is that two things. It, it's, that's leadership, that you lead the profession by standing in your grace and in your vulnerability and in your power. And you're showing a different kind of power that is essential, and it is the feminine power. It's not the part of you that looks really all put together and neat and tidy, and that we can all be proud of. There's that, of course, but what our world needs now more than anything is vulnerability, truth, real, being honest and real and open, the messy parts, the parts that don't look so good, but the parts that actually show the people who are really struggling the way. This is what happens. And I think women supporting women is how that happens. And so I'm delighted to be on here with you, supporting you and you me, and that's the way it just continues. Let's keep holding hands and moving forward and grabbing some more hands.
Yeah, yeah, and I know. I mean, I'm looking at this card that you sent me, Gail. This was so sweet. It was so unexpected that I feel you as a faraway mentor that's in the space, that's holding space, that's leading the way. So I appreciate you in all of the ways, and I appreciate you coming onto this and taking time and reflecting back and reminding me of the different ways of holding power.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and we touched on it slightly. Part of this podcast is it is money, it's high sensitivity, and it's also social justice. And one of the ways that I love to define social justice is seeing our interconnectedness, that all of our well-being is connected. And there's a story in the body of money that really touched me. You said your father and another man were chopping, was it wood or something? They were chopping palm trees, and you invited the man over for dinner and realized that you had done something wrong.
Mm.
You
What
put
was
it
it?
in, it's in the book itself. I don't remember what section it was, but I remember it stood out to me because you're talking about race and experiencing race as a very young girl.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm happy to share this, and I feel so this is my vulnerable place. So I feel shame from my family of origin in that way. But Henry was his name, and he was black bodied, and he and my father had been out clearing some of the woods in our property. And I was not more than 3, 4 years old. I was very young. And I was taught that, and it was dinner time. And I was taught that when, people are hungry, you invite them to dinner. And so I remember I just said, Henry, do you want to come to dinner? And it was an awkward silence. And he declined. And then that awkward silence, I felt something from my father. So, so all of these moments is our internal space and what's happening in the space. So I'm pointing to, we know, we feel this, particularly highly sensitive people. And at that time in my parents' life, and we didn't invite our guests, hired help to have dinner with us. But I didn't understand that because that was contradictory to what values I believed in that were spoken. And but what kept coming through is my father repeating the story. Gayle invited Henry to dinner, and he knew better than to accept, and he thought it was funny, and I was just confused. And so that was a very my heart hurts as I'm talking,
Yeah.
and that probably impacted a lot of my choices in life to move up to Boston to do work that would benefit all people. And yeah,
I'm thinking of the fact that we're socialized into the current systems that are set in place, right? Like the systems that we have in place around racism, misogyny, all of those things. They're at some level choices that we keep repeating, that we keep teaching our children. Because you, as a child, you didn't, eh, you you saw a person that was probably hungry,
how
right?
could right? Yeah, it's finished working really hard. It's time to eat.
Hmm. And one of my best friends was telling me about her son is 7 years old, and one of his friends changed gender, right? Is gender fluid as a 7-year-old. And you were talking about like, how do kids know about gender? But she said that when she shared it with her son, like this person that was this gender is now this other gender, her son was like, okay. Like completely unfazed, completely no questions, like people expressing themselves is the most natural of things as children. And we're trained at some level, at some point, the experience you just talked about. Like, I think many, many people across all races have been taught distrust the other.
Yeah. And and the conflict of this is the family that I'm born into, and my survival, my connection, my self-worth is tied to this. It just makes it very hard because to know, remember that true essence, that inner resourcefulness. So there is a it is a conflict that is part of our human condition and will need to be resolved. You either resolve it by burying your head in the sand and continuing the behavior, or you resolve it by, becoming more aware and conscious and realizing that we're all in this together.
Thank you, Gail, for sharing about like what that was impacting you, like how it impacts you to talk about race. And I think that whenever we talk about these subjects that our instinct is to hide, by
Mm,
shining a compassionate light on them, they're being transformed. And my prayer is that it's not just being transformed in both of us here and in our listeners, but in the people that then the listeners interact with, right? Like there's positive ripples that come from illustrating how to bring compassionate light to something that's painful.
mm,
And yes, the one of the questions that I'm being asked right now by clients that I'm looking at myself is when someone's the first one in their family to reach financial success, right? And it could be someone who's a child of immigrants or just someone who's a child of people that were doing blue collar jobs and has now moved into a white collar job. Like if you're one of the people in your family and the only one with access to resources, and you want to both care for yourself, right? Save for your retirement, buy your own house, take a vacation, and then you also have these family members that need support. What are the ways to balance that, to integrate that,
yeah,
and not to go off into one extreme where you say, well, you guys good luck, I made it. Good luck to you, or the other extreme of burning out, working yourself ragged.
yeah. That's a beautiful question, a beautiful opportunity for family healing and evolution. And it does begin with that financially successful member, because in one of the we can feel guilty for being successful. Family members can help, can add shame to that, which is their thing. But one of the things that we need to recognize is actually what I was talking about in the family system. Because when you become successful and everyone else financially successful and everyone else is not, that's a shift in that system. So you're already separate. So the things that you are normally used to change. And so what happens is, in order to there are two things that can happen. You can revert back to that system as it's always known it, or your financial success can support the evolution and the shifting of the system to them also being able to be empowered and financially successful. But it does not happen with one person supporting the whole system, because that's, as you were describing, that's it will break. It will either, I will work myself to oblivion, or and then I won't work at all. What I'm gonna describe some like baby steps because I think it's one of the first things to recognize is that there's a change. There is a change in the system, and it might look like I have more power, more this, more that. So there's a way of wanting to preserve allyship, that's the same, but also recognize that because I have financial success, I do have more options, more freedom, more choice, which can seem like more power. And so that's okay. We need to be able to own that and be in that and say, it's okay that I am here. And I see my family is still there. So to recognize like this is what's true. There's a practice I have that I love from Hendricks, my study with Katie for many years. It's called FACE. So facing stands for or fact, excuse me, FACT. The F is facing, the A is accepting, the C is choosing, and the T is taking action. And so facing is really just naming what is. And so having that as an opportunity to ground, really ground, and this is what is, and it's not anything to change. It's just okay, these are the facts. Accepting. That's when part of the experience softens, and you get to accept. I am in a different place. I have earned this. I am proud of myself, and I am changing the course of history for my family ancestral line. And they're okay, and I'm okay. We're okay. And that acceptance holds both polarities. That acceptance allows for the continuation of what I'm doing and my own well-being, and a discernment of what is truly going to be helpful for my family members. So it's a practice of communication, motivation, inspiration, like values, and very exquisite, intentional choices. So the C is choosing. And that's where I'll call it, the financial planning analysis comes in. It's like, first and foremost, you take care of yourself. The financially successful person has to have their own plan and their own, and and it's I guess it's a gray area to discern how much is too much, not enough, and how much is extra. But therein lies part of the discernment and ability to go into choices. There's a self choice, and then there's the okay, I have this much to support family members. Where is it going? What's the what then that's the beauty of, I'm going to say, creating the painting. I mean, it's a play. It's dynamic. What if one person, what get education? One person has a business idea that wants to start and get empowered and do their own thing. I mean, there are seeds that can happen, but it wants to go from, empowerment, not pity, not there's a problem, not you need this, if I don't give this to you, you won't survive. It really wants to come from empowerment, because I know the shadow of the philanthropist is giving, 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 and thinking that, being more generous and more selfless is better than making sure that we're okay, that's a belief. That's one of those limiting beliefs that is not true. If you give away to where you don't have enough to support yourself, then you're back where you started. So I said a lot. I'm yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the shadow sides of the philanthropist, and I identify a lot with the philanthropist. Like I'm very heart motivated, but I also know that it can look like martyrdom. Like, look at all I've done for you, like walking up the stairs with like my
Yeah,
hand. I've
good.
done so much that can get set off again. Someone gendered female, we might be more likely to display that.
Yeah.
And in thinking about social justice, this is a quote that I say often on this podcast, but Leela Watson, she is an Aboriginal artist in Australia. And she says that if you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together.
Oh
Right?
my God, I have chills all the way around my legs, my arms. Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. Beautiful. God.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. When you were outlining facing, accepting, choosing, taking action, and that first section of facing what's happening and accepting that you now are in a different place, like you are in a place that can change systems or that can continue systems and maybe make them, if it's time for them to evolve and you choose not to evolve, then they may end up devolving, right? They may end up getting worse. So the way that I'm bringing in that quote is seeing that the person who's financially successful, and this is one of the things that I love working with a lot of first generation immigrants, and this might be the case everywhere, but there is this sense of pride of like, I was able to get here because my parents were such a big part of it, because my grandparents, my aunts, like it was actually a family endeavor for me to get to where I am.
yeah.
So seeing them do well is part of my reason for doing well financially, right?
Yes.
And also, you're part of it. Like that, again, that's been a growing edge for me of including myself within the community that deserves to be well.
Yeah. I love looking at circles. I love just like having that visual of being in the circle with the family. Like, oh, like we're going to pass around a glass of water. I get to drink from that water too. You know, we have a fire in the middle. We each get to hold a stick of that fire. I get to hold one too.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
love what you said that it's we are not alone. You are not alone. Your family played a big part. Yeah. Thank you.
And where I wanted to end our conversation is in one of the quotes that I read in your book and in The Body of Money. You wrote, most useful skills are built through conscious sacred action, not unconscious habit. And this just stood out for me so much about conscious sacred action, right? We
Mm.
often don't think about that in our day to day, or I think most people don't think about it in their day to day. How would you invite people to bring in conscious sacred action into their money relationship?
Conscious sacred action is the fruition of deep alignment and contemplation and spiritual practice. And I say spiritual, but I actually believe our human journey is a spiritual journey. So I guess it's all about expanding our awareness. And underlying everything that we do is our heart motivation. And so being utterly impeccable with what is our motivation, not lying to ourselves. And I'm going to use some things that whatever your motivation, it is okay. That's the first thing. But don't pretend it's something else. So let me say this, profit is important. So if your motivation is profit, let it be profit. And then profit will come through this sacred conscious sacred action. It's like, because when I hear that, it's how's this going to be? I'm going to do it through the lens of people who do want a better world, because I think that I can't do it for greed. I'm doing it for, but it's
Yeah,
just profit.
definitely.
That profit is going to go to serve the things, the items that need to be served in order to create this better world. But underneath this is, I want a better world. I'm, that's where my the source of my conscious sacred action is coming from. Habit is continuing to do the same thing over again that has just been handed to you, or that it's just a really asleep, fearful. It's I'm going to say habit is not a healthy habit or whatever, but these is fear. It's just fear and contraction. It's that I am just kind of living this life and checking it off. So conscious sacred action with money is really realizing that money is an integral part of who we are. Money wants to be aligned with a bigger purpose. And when we truly do that alignment, paying bills, giving to our charity of choice, reconciling, these things that might be seen as just rote actions, there's this integration that allows for us to feel relief and freedom, knowing that we are coming from that deepest well. And it's not a concept. I can talk about this with you, but it's a direct experience of us being in that, and it's flow, it's joy. It it's that union of our life. And I want to give you something practical, because you said what's a clear thing.
I'm hearing it. I'm hearing in that example that you had of paying bills, right? Like conscious sacred action in our relationship with money, as using money as a portal towards presence. It's saying, how am I earning money? How am I spending money? How am I sharing it, giving it, investing it for the long term, or I don't know, saving it for the long term? It's just, and I love that, being utterly impeccable with our motivation, understanding our motivations and without judgment, right? Because I also heard you say, like, your motivations can be whatever they are. Just don't pretend that there's something else. That's such deep work, because a lot of the times it's easier to pretend than to actually look at ourselves.
Well, it's easier to pretend, but guess what? Our body knows the difference.
Mhm.
Our body is always going, what? What? So when we have aches and pains, it's like, oh, that's an invitation. Am I really being impeccable? I mean, our body will give us some response to our actions, and they always give us a response to our actions with money. Are we paying attention to it? That's, or are we shutting it down? And I think that's the work of somatic finance. That's the play of somatic finance. That's why it's here. If we have a world that's undeniable in our everybody has the right to liberty in the pursuit of happiness. We have that, and money is flowing in with that truth. We have a whole different world. I can't imagine anything more important. I really can't, because right now we're doing a shitty job. I think about the violence and everything that's going on everywhere, and that hurts my heart. And money is all filled in all of that, money and power. And so we've got to get it right inside, and then it becomes right outside.
It's like individuals can't solve systemic issues. And yet, as individuals, we can change consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We can say, and this is where it stops.
Yeah, we can do our own interior development that does have an impact in others around us and changes that field. And that's what I'm up to. That's what you're up to. I'm proud to be doing it with you, my friend.
Same, same. Thank you for leading the way in so many ways and for letting me know that I'm also being a leader. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Highly Sensitive Money, where we explore the powerful connections between money, social justice, and personal growth. It was wonderful having Gayle Colman join us to share her insights on bringing compassion, presence, and somatic awareness into our financial lives. Whether it's learning to create safe spaces around money or integrating the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of money, Gayle's insights offer a fresh, compassionate way to engage with our finances. This is the last episode of season 3 of Highly Sensitive Money, and I'm thrilled to share that I reached my goal of releasing 30 episodes in 2024. If you're curious about more ways to connect with your own financial journey as a highly sensitive person, head over to my website, allthecolors.net, where you'll find resources, episodes, and tools for embracing money with clarity and confidence. You can also take a quick quiz on money archetypes, which is a fun way to understand your unique patterns and preferences around money. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a rating and review. Your support helps us reach more listeners, especially those who might benefit from our sensitive approach to money. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks again for being here, for turning into these conversations, and for joining us in this journey.